The night was pitch black, with only the faint glow of the moonlight breaking through the thick canopy of the jungle. A lone helicopter flew silently through the air, its rotors making almost no sound as it hovered just above the treetops. Inside the helicopter, Captain John Hawk Daniels sat with his team, his face a mask of determination. The mission ahead was dangerous, but failure was not an option. Hawk looked around at his team, each one of them highly trained, handpicked for this operation. There was Mason, the explosives expert, a man who could turn anything into a bomb. Next to him sat Ramirez, a stealth specialist who could move through a crowded room without being noticed. On Hawk's right was Taylor, the team's sharpshooter, known for his deadly accuracy, even in the most stressful situations. Finally, there was Williams, a communications expert who would ensure they stayed connected with base, no matter how deep into enemy territory they ventured. "All right, listen up," Hawk began, his voice low but firm. "The mission is straightforward. We infiltrate the enemy's base, extract Dr. Eleanor Carter, and get out before anyone knows we were there. The Cobra is using Dr. Carter to develop a weapon that could cause massive destruction. We stop that from happening tonight." The team nodded in unison, their expressions serious. They knew the risks involved. The Cobra was a notorious warlord, feared throughout the region for his ruthlessness. His base was a fortress, hidden deep in the jungle, surrounded by an army of loyal soldiers. But Hawk's team had been through tough missions before. They were ready. As the helicopter reached the drop zone, the team quickly prepared to rappel down. One by one, they descended into the dense jungle below, landing softly on the soft, damp ground. The air was thick with humidity, and the smell of wet earth filled their senses. The jungle was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, crickets chirping, frogs croaking, and the occasional distant roar of a wild animal. But the team remained focused, their eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. Hawk took the lead, motioning for the team to follow. They moved in a single file, their steps almost soundless as they navigated through the thick foliage. The jungle was dense, and progress was slow, but they had to be careful. One wrong move could alert the enemy to their presence. After what felt like hours of navigating the jungle, the team finally reached the edge of the enemy's base. The base was hidden within the ruins of an ancient fortress, its tall, crumbling walls covered in vines and moss. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their silhouettes barely visible in the dim light. Hawk signaled for the team to stop. He crouched low, pulling out his binoculars to get a closer look at the patrols. The guards were well armed, and their movements were precise. This was no ordinary militia. These were trained soldiers, loyal to the Cobra. "We'll need to be quick and quiet," Hawk whispered to his team. "We stick to the shadows and take out any guards silently. No gunfire, unless absolutely necessary." The team nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Moving quickly but carefully, they approached the fortress wall. Hawk spotted a section of the wall that was less guarded, a weak point they could exploit. They set up their climbing gear, and one by one, began the ascent. The wall was slick with moss, making the climb difficult, but they were well trained and determined. As they reached the top, they paused, lying flat against the cold stone to avoid being seen. Below them, the courtyard was dimly lit by a few flickering torches. Guards walked in pairs, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of intruders. Hawk carefully observed their movements, waiting for the right moment to signal his team. When the time was right, they descended into the courtyard, landing silently behind a row of crates. Hawk motioned for Mason to set the charge on the main power supply, a small box located near one of the walls. Mason moved quickly, placing the charge with expert precision. With a soft click, the timer was set. The explosion was small but effective. The base was plunged into darkness as the power was cut, and chaos erupted. Guards shouted in confusion, scrambling to restore order. But the sudden blackout worked in the team's favor. They moved swiftly through the darkened corridors of the fortress, avoiding any guards that came too close. As they moved deeper into the fortress, the tension grew. They knew they were getting closer to Dr. Carter, but the enemy could be anywhere. The air was thick with suspense as they navigated the labyrinth of corridors, each one looking the same as the last. The only sounds were their own quiet footsteps and the distant shouts of the guards. Finally, they reached a heavy steel door at the end of a narrow hallway. Hawk pressed his ear against the door, listening for any sounds inside. Hearing nothing, he signaled to the team to prepare for entry. With a swift, powerful kick, Hawk forced the door open. Inside, they found Dr. Carter, tied to a chair in the center of the room. She looked up in surprise, her eyes widening in relief when she saw the team. Hawk quickly moved to her side, cutting the ropes that bound her. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low. Dr. Carter nodded, though she looked exhausted. "I'm fine, but we need to move. The Cobra has been working on something dangerous. We can't let him complete it." Hawk nodded. "We're getting you out of here. Stay close to us." He handed her a small weapon, just in case. But before they could leave, they heard the sound of footsteps echoing down the corridor. Hawk's heart raced as he signaled the team to take positions. They barely had time to hide before the door burst open and enemy guards flooded into the room. A fierce firefight erupted. The once quiet fortress now filled with the deafening sound of gunfire. Hawk's team moved with precision, taking down the guards with well-placed shots. But more guards kept coming, and the team was forced to fight their way out of the room and back into the corridor. As they fought their way through the fortress, it became clear that the Cobra had been alerted to their presence. The guards were more organized now, working together to try and corner the team. But Hawk's team was trained for this. They moved quickly, staying one step ahead of the enemy. Finally, they reached the courtyard again, but their path to the extraction point was blocked by none other than the Cobra himself. He stood there, a menacing figure in the dark, his eyes cold and calculating. "You're not getting out of here alive," he snarled, pulling out a knife. Hawk stepped forward, knowing this was a fight he couldn't avoid. The team watched tensely as Hawk and the Cobra circled each other, the air thick with anticipation. The fight that followed was brutal. The Cobra was strong and fast, but Hawk was experienced. They exchanged blows, each trying to gain the upper hand. The fight dragged on, both men refusing to back down. But Hawk's experience and determination gave him the edge. With a final, powerful strike, he disarmed the Cobra and sent him crashing to the ground. The warlord lay unconscious, defeated. With the Cobra out of the way, the team wasted no time. They dashed through the courtyard, heading towards the extraction point. The helicopter was already waiting, its rotor spinning. The team boarded. Hawk helped Dr. Carter into the helicopter before climbing in himself. As the helicopter lifted off, the fortress below grew smaller, disappearing into the darkness of the jungle. Hawk looked at his team, exhausted but relieved. The mission was a success, but they all knew that this was just one battle in a much larger war. Dr. Carter sat quietly, her eyes closed as she took a moment to breathe. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the helicopter. Hawk nodded. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." The team sat in silence as the helicopter flew them back to base. They had accomplished their mission, but the fight was far from over. As the jungle faded into the distance, they prepared themselves for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they would face them together, no matter the cost.